Now, let's dive into some of those slightly more confusing groups. Fog is represented by the code FG. This can appear as a standalone entry. Essentially, this means the observer is currently in fog, where the visibility has dropped below 1000 meters. However, there are 5 specific qualifiers that can precede FG when the conditions are just right. These are VC, BC, PR, MI, and FZ. So, what exactly do these mean? We've already covered FG on its own. So let's move on to the next one. Up next is VCFG, or fog in the vicinity. This tells us that the observer can see fog within 8 kilometers of the airfield. But it remains outside of the actual aerodrome boundary. BCFG is used when the observer can see at least one patch of fog contained entirely within the aerodrome boundary. PRFG is a bit different. This is reported when the observer sees that a fog bank has encroached upon the aerodrome boundary. Finally, MIFG is a unique one, indicating shallow fog present right at the observation point. This shallow fog, or mini fog as it's often called, can be either patchy or continuous. But crucially, it must be no deeper than 2 meters. To report fog, the observer must have a clear vertical view over the top. And the visibility must be greater than 1000 meters. Next up is the qualifier FZ, which specifically denotes freezing fog. This identifier tells you that the observer is currently in fog, and the ambient temperature is at or below 0 degrees Celsius. I know fog can be a bit confusing at times, but just stick to the rules, and you'll easily decode exactly what the observation is telling you. Now, another critical weather group we need to cover is the thunderstorm group. By definition, a thunderstorm is occurring at an airport only if thunder has been heard within the last 10 minutes. This is a key point. Seeing lightning alone doesn't necessarily mean a thunderstorm is officially reported at your location. Whenever a thunderstorm is active, we use the designator TS. If there is no precipitation accompanying it, we simply report TS on its own. However, if there is precipitation present, we insert 2 additional letters to clarify. For example, if you have rain, you'll see it reported as TSRA. Likewise, if there is hail with a diameter greater than 5 millimeters, you will see TSGR. And as a quick tip, keep in mind that TSGS is used for smaller hail diameters. That wraps up our look at the present weather group. Just one final detail to keep in mind. While rules can vary between countries, and military stations often differ from civilian ones, generally speaking, you'll see a maximum of 3 separate weather groups in any single observation. For instance, you might find a location reporting fog even while a thunderstorm is audible in the distance. It is important to note that these 2 weather phenomena are reported in separate groups rather than combined into one. Next up in our METAR report, we look at cloud information. We use a specific set of cloud prefixes to describe the coverage for each individual layer. The sky is conceptually divided into 8s, which we refer to as octas. Depending on that coverage, we use the term few to describe 1 to 2 octas of cloud. scattered for 3 to 4 octas, broken for 5 to 7 octas, or overcast when the sky is completely covered, representing 8 octas. Immediately following the coverage amount, you will see the cloud height. This is always presented as a 3-digit figure representing hundreds of feet. Remember, cloud heights in a meter are always measured from the aerodrome level based on QFE. For example, 4 octas at 900 feet would be reported as scattered 009. And 8 octas at 1800 feet would be abbreviated as overcast 018. If there are multiple cloud layers present, they will always be listed in ascending order. Higher layers are only included in your meter if they cover a greater proportion of the sky than the layer reported immediately below them. In our example meter, we have a visibility of 8 kilometers and 2 distinct cloud layers. The first is a few at 900 feet, followed by a broken layer at 1500 feet. Keep in mind that special cloud types may also appear in a meter. If so, they are used to specifically denote the presence of towering cumulus or cumulonimbus clouds. Every now and then, you might see vertical visibility included in a meter report. This is represented by the code VV, followed by the vertical visibility in hundreds of feet, as determined by the observer. You will typically see this used when the sky is obscured. This obscuration is often caused by phenomena like fog or smoke. In these cases, a special code is used in place of standard cloud information. Let's dive into a typical example together. Here, we see a light southwesterly wind with visibility at 100 meters due to fog, and a vertical visibility that the observer was unable to measure. Because of that, no numerical value was provided. Occasionally, you will see a figure attached to this group. For example, you might see VV002. This tells us that the vertical visibility is measured at 200 feet. Now, the term CAVOC is frequently used in meter codes to indicate that ceiling and visibility are perfectly fine. If CAVOC is used, it replaces the visibility and cloud reporting groups entirely. There are 4 specific criteria that must be met before we can use the term CAVOC. The first requirement is that the visibility must be 10 kilometers or more. Next, there must be no clouds below 5,000 feet or below the highest minimum sector altitude, whichever is greater. Furthermore, there must be no cumulonimbus clouds present and no significant weather phenomena. If all of these criteria are met, then the abbreviation CAVOC will appear in your meter report. Notice that in this example, there is no other visibility or cloud information mentioned. Next up in our meter code, we have the temperature and dew point group. This consists of a 2-digit number for the ambient air temperature, followed by a forward slash and another 2-digit number representing the dew point. Keep in mind that these values are always measured in degrees Celsius. In this specific example, the air temperature is plus 10 degrees Celsius and the dew point is plus 2 degrees. If either value is negative, you will see an M prefix indicating a minus sign. So, in this case, the dew point would be minus 2 degrees Celsius. Remember, temperatures are always rounded to the nearest whole degree. If you encounter a 0.5, we always round up to the next higher temperature. For instance, minus 2.5 degrees would be coded as M02. Moving on, the next vital part of the meter is the QNH. As we discussed in our lesson on altimetry, the QNH is absolutely critical for your flight safety. The QNH is displayed as the letter Q followed by 4 digits that represent the current barometric pressure. If the QNH is less than 1000 hectopascals, you'll see a leading zero to fill the space. For example, a QNH of 991 hectopascals would be reported as Q0991. It is important to note that only the QNH appears in a meter, no other pressure values are included. For safety reasons, remember that the QNH is always rounded down. We have already covered the present weather group, so let's keep moving. Now, let's take a look at another useful section, the past or recent weather group. This group appears only when significant weather has occurred within the past hour or since the last meter, whichever is shorter. The group always begins with the prefix re and is included if the weather phenomenon is no longer occurring or has decreased in intensity. Let's take a look at how this works in practice. The only elements included are freezing precipitation, moderate or heavy drizzle, rain, snow, ice pellets, hail, blowing snow, small hail or snow pellets, thunderstorms, funnel clouds, volcanic ash, or sand and dust storms. Now, let's look at a practical example. If there was heavy rain during the hour, but by the time of the observation the rain had reduced to light, the present weather would be RA with RARA added as the recent weather group. Keep in mind that no qualifiers are used within these recent weather groups. Essentially, if any of the criteria we mentioned occurred but are not part of the present weather report, a recent weather group will be included. Here is another example for you. It is currently raining heavily, but there was heavy snow earlier in the hour, so we would report the recent snow. That covers the basics of the recent weather group, with just two small rules left to mention. Showers are simply categorized as either rain or snow. Finally, note that you can have up to 3 recent weather groups included in a meter.